Professor Velkhtar had taught xenobiology at the Galactic Academy for 600 cycles. 600 cycles of explaining to eager young minds why certain species evolved claws, why others developed telepathy, and why a select few unfortunate souls were born on what the galaxy classified as Class 7 Deathworlds. He had never in all those cycles been interrupted quite like this. And so, Velkhtar continued, his three eyes talk swiveling to scan the lecture hall. We arrive at classification tier Omega, the absolute pinnacle of planetary hostility. Only 12 planets in known space carry this designation, and of those 12, only one has produced sentient life that not only survived but thrived. The holographic display behind him flickered to life, showing a blue and green sphere rotating slowly in the void. Gasps rippled through the assembled students. A Corvellian in the front row actually fainted. The meditation crystals of a Zentari monk shattered on the floor. Earth, Velkhtar announced with the dramatic flair that had made him legendary among the student body. Designation Terra, home to the humans. That was when the human raised her hand. Not politely, mind you. Not the gentle appendage elevation that the Quillari practiced, or the respectful antenna twitch of the Brelix. No, this human, one Mira Kowalski according to the roster, simply thrust her arm straight up into the air with enough force that Velkhtar briefly worried she might achieve liftoff. Professor? Her voice carried across the amphitheater with startling clarity. Most species required amplification in a space this large. Humans apparently did not. Yes, Miss Kowalski. Velkhtar's middle eyes talk focused on her while the other two continued scanning the room. It was a useful talent for maintaining classroom order. I have a question. Of course. However, I would prefer if students waited until after the presentation to stop. The single word cut through the air like a plasma cutter through hull plating. Every being in that lecture hall froze. You could have heard a flitter's wing beat in the silence that followed. Velkhtar's dorsal fin twitched, a sign of confusion among his people. I beg your pardon? You need to stop right there, Professor. Mira stood up and several students in adjacent seats instinctively leaned away. Because I can already see where this is going and I really need to clear some things up before you start listing all the supposedly terrifying things about my homeworld that make everyone look at me like I might spontaneously combust and take half the station with me. A nervous laugh rippled through the crowd. A Yixlar in the back row made the sign of protection. Another student, a gelatinous morphid named Blorp, literally oozed under their desk. Velkhtar's teaching tendrils curled in what might have been amusement, or irritation. With his species it was difficult to tell. Miss Kowalski, I assure you that this lecture is based entirely on peer-reviewed xenobiological research and, let me guess, Mira counted on her fingers. You are about to tell everyone that Earth has predators that can run for days without stopping, that our gravity is 2.3 times galactic standard, that our atmosphere has oxygen levels that would literally kill 60% of known species through oxidative combustion, that our planet is 70% covered in a liquid that most species consider a universal solvent, that we have weather patterns capable of leveling entire cities, that our very own star bombards us with enough radiation to cause cellular breakdown in unprotected organisms. Am I warm? The temperature in the lecture hall actually did seem to rise several degrees. Velkhtar's eyes talks intertwined briefly. Another sign of emotional response. Well, yes, that was going to be the general thrust of, and let me guess the next part. Mira was on a roll now, pacing between the desk rows with an energy that made several students press themselves against their seats. You were going to talk about how humans have binocular vision because we evolved as persistence hunters, how our forward-facing eyes indicate predator status, how we have an entire system in our bodies dedicated to flooding our bloodstream with combat chemicals at the first sign of danger, how we can eat things that would constitute deadly poison to most species, how we form pack bonds with actual predators, and keep them in our homes as companions, how we ingest known toxins for recreational purposes, and call it coffee and alcohol and hot sauce. A Krellic student in the third row made a choking sound. Or maybe that was just normal breathing for their species. Hard to say. Furthermore, Mira continued, and was she actually enjoying this? You were probably going to mention that humans have killed each other in wars numbering in the millions, that we have survived multiple extinction-level events, that our children's entertainment is filled with violence and predation, and that despite all of this we somehow convinced the Galactic Council to let us join the community of civilized species. Does that about cover it, Professor? Velkhtar's fin had gone completely rigid. That is, remarkably accurate, Miss Kowalski. Thought so. Mira crossed her arms. I have sat through 7 of these presentations since I arrived at the Academy. 7. Every single professor, with the best of intentions I'm sure, decides that their xenobiology or cultural studies or whatever class is the perfect opportunity to simultaneously terrify and fascinate their students with tales of the Deathworld barbarians. Now see here, Velkhtar began, his teaching voice taking on a slightly defensive edge. The purpose of this lecture is educational, not sensational. Students need to understand the full scope of environmental pressures that shape species development. Oh, I agree completely. Mira's expression shifted to something that might have been a smile but contained far too many teeth for comfort. So let's educate them properly, with context, and maybe a bit of truth instead of the highlights reel that makes me sound like I wrestle gravitational anomalies for breakfast. A brave Skeltari student raised a tentacle. Do you not wrestle gravitational anomalies for breakfast? No, Plixnar. I have toast. Sometimes cereal. On weekends, maybe eggs. Mira turned back to the professor. Permission to provide some counterpoint to your lecture, Professor Velkhtar. The professor's eyes swiveled in what was definitely amusement now. In 600 cycles of teaching, no one had ever requested to debate him during his own lecture. It was refreshing in a mildly terrifying way. By all means, Miss Kowalski, the floor is yours. Mira walked to the front of the hall, her footsteps making soft sounds on the polished floor. Each step registered at exactly 1 Earth standard gravity, which in this station's reduced gravity field meant she seemed to bounce slightly with each movement. It created an oddly hypnotic effect. Okay, she faced the assembled students, easily 200 beings from across the known galaxy. Let's talk about Earth, and let's talk about the things Professor Velkhtar was absolutely going to mention, because yes, they are all technically true, but context matters. She pointed at the holographic Earth still rotating behind her. Fact 1. Earth has high gravity. 2.3 times what the Galactic Council decided was standard, which by the way is based on averaging every known habitable world, and is therefore kind of meaningless as a practical measurement. Yes, this means I am stronger than most of you in equal gravity conditions. It also means that I have to be really careful when I shake hands because I accidentally sent a Quailari to medical 3 times in my first week because I forgot that what feels like a normal grip to me can actually fracture bone analogs. Several students shifted uncomfortably. One made a note on their data pad, probably writing avoid handshakes with human. Fact 2. Earth has dangerous predators. We have things called tigers and bears and sharks and crocodiles, and my personal favorite, the honey badger, which is a small mammal that has exactly 0 fear and will fight literally anything up to and including animals 50 times its size. Mira paused. But you know what else we have? We have deer. We have rabbits. We have butterflies and goldfish and pandas who are so non-threatening that they occasionally forget to reproduce and need help from humans to remember how. A ripple of what might have been laughter went through the crowd. Fact 3. Yes, our atmosphere will kill a lot of you. Know what our atmosphere will also kill? Humans, if we are not careful. We can drown in our own oceans. We can be crushed by our own gravity if we fall wrong. We can be poisoned by our own plants if we eat the wrong ones. We have a whole category of weather called natural disasters because sometimes our own planet just decides to kill us for no particular reason. Velkhtar's teaching tendrils uncurled completely. He was leaning forward now, genuinely engaged. See, here's the thing everyone seems to miss when they talk about Deathworlds. Mira's voice softened slightly. Yes, Earth is dangerous. Yes, it shaped us in specific ways, but it also taught us to be careful, to cooperate, to plan ahead. You know why humans are good at persistence hunting? Not because we are vicious predators, because we learn to work together, to communicate, to share resources. One human alone on the African savanna dies pretty quickly. A group of humans who cooperate, they built civilizations. The lecture hall was silent now, but it was a different kind of silence than before, attentive rather than fearful. And yes, we do have binocular vision, and yes, it does make us good hunters. It also makes us really good at judging distances, which is why humans are disproportionately represented in fields like surgery, engineering, and art. That predator vision everyone finds so scary? We use it to put together machines with precision tolerances that would make a Clicktar weep. We use it to paint, to sculpt, to perform medical procedures that save lives across the galaxy. Professor Velkhtar made a sound that might have been approval, hard to say with his species. The pack bonding thing? Mira actually grinned. Okay, that one is just weird. I will admit it. We absolutely do befriend predators and keep them in our living spaces, but we also befriend each other. Humans will pack bond with anything that holds still long enough. I have a roommate who has formed an emotional attachment to a maintenance robot. She named it Herbert. Herbert does not have sentience. She does not care. Genuine laughter now. Even some of the more nervous students seemed to be relaxing. My point is this. Mira looked around the room, making eye contact with as many students as she could. Everything you are going to hear about humans in this class is probably true, but it is not the whole truth. Yes, we come from a dangerous world. Yes, that made us dangerous in some ways, but it also made us adaptable, creative, empathetic, because when your whole planet is trying to kill you, you learn pretty quickly that working together is better than working alone. She turned to Professor Velkanthar. So by all means, Professor, continue your lecture. Tell them about the Deathworld. Tell them about the dangers and the adaptations and the statistical anomalies, but maybe also tell them that the same species that evolved to hunt mammoth also evolved to make music and art and poetry. That we didn't conquer our planet, we learned to live with it, and that maybe, just maybe, that is more impressive than any amount of high-gravity adaptation or predator evolution could ever be. The silence stretched for 3 full seconds. Then Velkhtar began the Threlix equivalent of applause, which involved rapidly vibrating his dorsal fin and clicking his teaching tendrils together. Within moments, the entire lecture hall had joined in, each species contributing their own version of appreciation. The sound was cacophonous and beautiful and utterly unlike anything else in the galaxy. Mira blinked, clearly not having expected this response. Her cheeks colored slightly, a human indication of emotional response that most of the class had learned to recognize. Well then, Professor Velkhtar said once the noise had died down, I believe we have just experienced a practical demonstration of another human trait, the ability to give rousing speeches under pressure. Miss Kowalski, would you be willing to assist me with the remainder of this lecture? I believe your perspective would be invaluable. I would be honored, Professor. Excellent. Then let us continue with the curriculum. But first, his eyes talks focused on the entire class. A question for all of you. After hearing Miss Kowalski's counterpoint, how many of you still believe that humans are simply dangerous predators to be feared? Not a single hand, tentacle, or appendage was raised. And how many of you now believe that humans are complex beings shaped by their environment but not defined solely by it? Every single appendage in the room went up. Even the morphid emerged from under the desk. Outstanding! You have all just learned the single most important lesson in xenobiology. Context matters. Understanding matters. Fear is the result of incomplete information. Velkhtar gestured to the holographic Earth. Now then, let us continue our examination of Tier Omega Deathworlds, but this time, with a more nuanced perspective. Mira returned to her seat to a series of respectful nods and gestures from her fellow students. The Krelix who had choked earlier gave her a small salute. Twixnar the Skeltari actually waved. As Professor Velkhtar launched into a detailed analysis of Earth's geological history, Mira allowed herself a small smile. Maybe this semester would be different after all. She had no idea how right she was, or how wrong, because what neither she nor Professor Velkhtar knew was that in the back row, partially hidden behind a particularly large Grelak student, sat an observer from the Galactic Defense Council. And that observer was taking very detailed notes indeed. Notes about the human who had just demonstrated advanced rhetorical skills, emotional intelligence, and the ability to command a room of 200 diverse beings with nothing but words and conviction. The kind of skills that the council found very, very interesting. The kind of skills that were about to make Mira Kowalski's life significantly more complicated. But that was a problem for later. For now she was just a student trying to get through xenobiology class without causing an interstellar incident. She was doing remarkably well, so far. 3 days after her impromptu lecture hall speech, Mira Kowalski discovered that becoming famous at the Galactic Academy was both easier and more annoying than she had anticipated. Is it true that humans can hold their breath for 6 minutes underwater? A flitter named Zixpic hovered at shoulder height, wings beating so fast they created a visible blur. Some humans, yes. I personally tap out at about 90 seconds before my lungs start screaming. Mira adjusted her data pad and tried to navigate through the corridor without making eye contact. It was not working. And is it accurate that your species can survive on minimal sleep for extended periods? This from a tall, crystalline-looking being whose name Mira kept forgetting. Definitely not from Earth, that much was certain. Technically, yes. Practically, no. We get really grumpy and start hallucinating if we skip too much sleep. I once stayed awake for 40 hours studying for exams and became convinced that my lamp was judging me. It was not a high point. The crystalline being made a notation. Everyone was always making notations around her now. She finally made it to the cafeteria, which on the Academy station was less a room and more an entire wing dedicated to the impossible task of feeding 3,000 students from 400 different species with wildly incompatible dietary requirements. The air smelled like a combination of burnt sulfur, honeysuckle, and something that might have been cheese but probably was not. Mira grabbed a tray and headed for the human-compatible section, which the kitchen staff had helpfully labeled Chemical Nightmare Zone in 12 languages. She appreciated their honesty if not their tact. "Mira, over here," a voice called from across the room. She turned to see her roommate, a Velen named Kix, waving enthusiastically from a table near the observation windows. Next to Kix sat 3 other beings Mira had come to know well over the past semester. There was Ren, a Quallery whose exoskeleton changed colors based on mood, and was currently displaying nervous purple stripes. Beside him sat Olivax, a floating jellyfish-looking creature who communicated through bioluminescent pulses and needed a translator box to participate in conversations. And finally there was Torvik, a Brelix whose multiple arms made him exceptionally good at taking notes and exceptionally bad at fitting through standard doorways. "You look harried," Kix observed as Mira sat down with her tray of what the menu optimistically called nutrition paste, but actually tasted like someone had tried to make chicken soup and gave up halfway through. 3 separate students asked me if humans could breathe fire. Fire, Kix. Where do people even get these ideas? Probably from that entertainment program about the human firefighters. Olivax pulsed through her translator. The one where they run into burning structures to save people. It does seem rather improbable. It is improbable. It is also incredibly dangerous, and we have to wear protective gear and breathing apparatus, and even then people die doing it. We are not fire resistant. We are just stubborn and occasionally heroic in deeply stupid ways. Ren's exoskeleton flickered to amused orange. "You know what the real problem is. You broke the narrative." "What narrative?" "The scary human narrative." Torvik gestured with 3 of his 6 arms, while somehow still managing to eat with the other 3. "Before your little speech in Velkanthar's class, everyone had a nice simple understanding of humans. Dangerous Deathworlders, probably going to snap and go on a rampage at any moment. Best to smile and nod and avoid direct confrontation. Simple, clean, easy to understand. That is a terrible narrative." "Oh, absolutely. But it was comfortable. People knew where they stood." Torvik pointed a fork equivalent at her. "Then you went and complicated everything by being articulate and reasonable and making actually valid points about cultural context. Now nobody knows what to think, so they are asking you questions directly instead of making assumptions. You should probably consider that a win." Mira poked at her nutrition paste. It poked back. She decided not to investigate further. "It does not feel like a win. It feels like I am some kind of exhibit. Come see the human. Watch her breathe oxygen without exploding. Marvel at her ability to consume capsaicin for pleasure. Speaking of which," Kales leaned forward conspiratorially, "is it true that you put hot sauce on literally everything? I hate you all. We know. That is why we are friends." The lunch conversation drifted to safer topics after that. Upcoming exams. The latest maintenance issues with the station's gravity generators. The scandal involving 2 professors from the astrophysics department who had been caught using the telescope array to spy on a neighboring solar system's reality entertainment broadcasts instead of conducting actual research. It was almost normal, almost comfortable. Then the lights in the cafeteria flickered once, twice, and went dark. Emergency lighting kicked in immediately, bathing everything in a red glow that made the already strange cafeteria look like something from a horror simulation. Several species made sounds of alarm. A Yixlar began praying loudly in the corner. "Please remain calm," a synthetic voice announced through the station speakers. "We are experiencing a temporary power fluctuation. Main lighting will be restored shortly." Mira felt more than saw her friends turn toward her in the darkness. "Why are you all looking at me?" "Because you are a human," Ren said, his exoskeleton now showing concerned purple. "And humans have exceptional vision in low light conditions compared to most species. Can you see anything unusual?" "I can see fine. Yes. And I can also tell you that this is not just a power fluctuation." Mira stood up, her eyes adjusting to the dim red glow far faster than most of the other beings in the room. "Look at the windows." They looked. Outside the observation windows, the normal running lights of the Academy station were dark. But more concerning, the lights of the nearby docking ring were also offline, and in the distance the navigation beacons that normally marked the approach lanes were simply gone. "That is not good." Olivax pulsed, her bioluminescence flickering nervously. "Attention all students and staff." A new voice came through the speakers. and Mira recognized it immediately. Professor Velktar, his usual calm teaching tone was strained. "We are initiating emergency protocols. Please proceed to your designated shelter locations in an orderly fashion. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill." The cafeteria erupted into chaos. Students from dozens of species all tried to move toward the exits simultaneously, creating an instant traffic jam of bodies, appendages, and panic. Someone screamed. Something that might have been a small creature or possibly someone's lunch scurried across the floor. A morphid lost cohesion and splattered across 3 other students who screamed louder. "Everybody stop." Mira's voice cut through the noise like a blade. It was the same voice she had used in Velktar's lecture hall, amplified now by genuine urgency and the acoustic properties of panic. "Just stop moving for 5 seconds. Remarkably, they did. "Okay. Listen carefully." Mira climbed onto the table, giving herself a better vantage point. Her higher gravity bone density meant she did not need to worry about the table collapsing, though Kex made a small sound of concern anyway. Panicking is going to get people hurt, trampled, crushed. Species who need specific atmospheric conditions might have their breathing apparatus damaged. So we are going to do this smart. And who put you in charge? A large Grelic student near the back called out, his translator giving his voice an aggressive edge. "Nobody. But I am standing on a table and talking loudly, which in most cultures constitutes temporary authority during emergencies. Anyone else want to stand on a table and organize an evacuation? No? Great. Then shut up and listen." Torvik made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Definitely a human. Mobile species exit first. If you can move faster than walking speed, head for the doors now. Stay to the right side of the corridor. Do not run. Fast walk only. Spread out between all 3 exits so we do not create bottlenecks. Go." About a third of the cafeteria began moving in a relatively orderly fashion toward the doors. The improvement over the previous chaos was dramatic. "Species with special atmospheric needs, you are next. Get to the exits and stick together. If anyone's equipment gets damaged, others can help. Move." Another portion of the crowd flowed toward the doors, this time with students actively helping each other navigate. "Everyone else, count to 30 and then proceed. Slowly, carefully. Help anyone who needs it." Mira hopped down from the table and turned to her friends. "We should probably get moving too." "That was impressive," Kale said as they joined the flow toward the nearest exit. "Very decisive, very commanding, very human, you mean?" I was trying to be diplomatic. They made it into the corridor, which was filled with students all moving in various directions with various levels of organization. The emergency lighting cast everything in shades of red and black, making it difficult to identify specific beings in the crowd. "Does anyone actually know where our designated shelter location is?" Torvik asked, using his multiple arms to keep smaller students from being swept away in the flow of traffic. "Dormitory level, Section 7, Room 42. Mira had memorized the emergency protocols in her first week. Old habits from living on a planet that regularly tried to kill you. Should be about 3 corridors over and 2 levels down. Assuming the elevators are working, Ren pointed out. "Assuming the elevators are working," Mira agreed. The elevators were not working. "Stairs it is then." Mira led the group to the emergency stairwell, which was already packed with students descending in a mostly controlled panic. The stairs were designed for general galactic standard body types, which meant they were slightly too small for some species and far too large for others. A group of flitters had given up on the stairs entirely and were simply flying down the central shaft, wings creating tiny wind currents that made everyone else's descent slightly more challenging. 2 levels down, 1 corridor over, Section 7, Room 42. The shelter was basically a reinforced classroom with emergency supplies and enough space for about 50 beings if they squeezed in tight. There were already at least 70 inside when Mira's group arrived, with more streaming in behind them. "This is cozy," Olivax pulsed sarcastically. "This is a potential crushing hazard," Mira corrected. She turned to a nearby staff member, a Threlix administrator whose name badge read Assistant Director Quell. "Sir, we have too many people in this space. We need to spread out to other rooms or we are going to have a crowd collapse situation." Quell's dorsal fin was vibrating with stress. "All shelters are over capacity. The entire dormitory wing has taken refuge on this level. We are working on redistributing, but it takes time and coordination and we do not have enough staff to—" "I can help." The words were out of Mira's mouth before her brain caught up with what she was volunteering for. "I can coordinate groups, get people moving to less crowded areas. Just tell me where you need them." Quell's eye stalks focused on her with an intensity that was almost physical. "You are the human, from Velktar's class. Kowalski. Yes, sir. Very well. Take anyone who volunteers and clear some space to sections 5 and 6. They have structural reinforcement but fewer supply caches. For short-term shelter they will work fine. He handed her a datapad. This has station layout and current capacity readings. Do not let anyone convince you to open the airlocks. We get at least 3 attempts every emergency. People try to open the airlocks during emergencies. Panic makes beings do strange things. Now go, quickly. Mira turned to the crowded room and once again found herself speaking loudly to a group of frightened aliens. She was starting to see a pattern in her life. Okay, everyone, listen up. We need volunteers to relocate to other shelter areas. Reduce crowding. Improve safety. Same level of protection. Who is willing to move? Silence. Frightened eyes, stalks, and sensor arrays all focused on her. Nobody wanted to leave the perceived safety of the designated shelter. Then Kales raised her hand. I will go. Us too, Torvik added, gesturing to include Ren and Olivax. We are with the human. A voice called from the back. It was Plixnar, the Skeltari from Velkthar's class. Behind him stood a dozen other students. Mira vaguely recognized from various lectures. If Kowalski says it is safe, another voice added. The Krellick student who had saluted her 3 days ago. Within 2 minutes, Mira had a group of 30 volunteers following her through red-lit corridors to the alternate shelter locations. She checked the datapad constantly, noting capacity levels and structural integrity readings she only partially understood. They were halfway to Section 5 when the station shuddered. Not a small vibration, not a minor turbulence from the gravity generators or a course correction from the positioning thrusters. This was a full-body impact that sent students sprawling and made the walls groan in protest. What was that? Someone screamed. Mira braced herself against the wall and checked the datapad. The screen flickered, went dark, came back to life showing error messages in 3 languages. I do not know, but we need to keep moving. Come on. They made it to Section 5 and started getting students settled when the second impact hit. This one was worse. The lights went out completely for 3 full seconds. When they came back, they were dimmer, flickering, unstable. And through the station speakers came a sound that made Mira's blood run cold. An alarm, but not the emergency shelter alarm, not the fire suppression alarm or the atmospheric breach alarm or any of the dozen standard alerts that students learned in orientation. This was the combat alert. The sound that meant the academy station was under attack. Oh, you have got to be kidding me, Mira muttered. Kales grabbed her arm. What is that alarm? What does it mean? It means we have a very serious problem. Mira pulled up the station's external sensor feed on the datapad, hoping it still had enough function to show her what was happening outside. What she saw made no sense. Ships. Dozens of them. Maybe hundreds. Small attack craft swarming around the station like insects around a light. And they were firing. Not at the station itself, but at something else. Something big. Something that was firing back. Is that? Torvik's voice trailed off in disbelief. Is that a Vren warfleet? The Vren? Mira knew that name from her galactic history courses. A species from the outer reaches who had rejected the Galactic Council 300 cycles ago and declared themselves independent, aggressive, territorial, and equipped with military technology that made most council members nervous. They also had absolutely no reason to attack a civilian academy station in neutral space. Why would the Vren attack us? Ren's exoskeleton had gone pure white with fear. We are students. This is an educational facility. We have no military value. Mira stared at the datapad screen, watching the battle unfold in real time. The attack craft were using hit-and-run tactics, fast strikes, rapid retreats, classic raider behavior. They were not trying to destroy the station. They were trying to board it. They are not attacking the station, Mira said quietly. They are attacking the defense ships trying to protect the station, which means the third impact shook the entire section. Somewhere close, very close, something exploded. The sound of metal tearing filled the air, which means they are coming inside, Mira finished. Through the walls, through the emergency lighting, through the red glow and the flickering shadows came a new sound. Footsteps. Heavy, rhythmic, armored footsteps. And they were getting closer. Mira looked at the 30 students crowded into Section 5. Students from a dozen different species. Kids, really. Young beings away from home for the first time, trying to get an education, trying to build a future. Beings who were now in immediate danger because someone had decided that an academy station was a valid military target. She thought about her speech in Velkthar's class, about context and nuance and how humans were not just dangerous predators but complex beings shaped by their environment. She thought about how she had argued so passionately for understanding over fear, and then she thought about the fact that sometimes, in certain situations, a little bit of that Deathworld evolution was exactly what the situation called for. Okay, Mira said, her voice dropping into a register her friends had never heard before. Calm, cold, calculated. New plan. Everyone who cannot fight, get to the back of the room. Everyone who can, grab anything heavy or sharp or both. We are going to defend this position. Defend? Plixnar's tentacles writhed nervously. Mira, we are students. We are not soldiers. No, you are not. Mira picked up a metal chair and tested its weight. In the station's reduced gravity it felt light as a toy. But I am a human from a tier Omega Deathworld, and if those footsteps belong to who I think they belong to, then they are about to learn exactly why the galaxy classified my planet the way they did. She looked at her friends, at the scared students, at the beings who had trusted her to lead them to safety. Stay behind me, do exactly what I say, and whatever happens, remember that humans did not survive 6 million years of evolution by giving up when things got scary. The footsteps were closer now, just outside the door. Mira raised the chair and smiled. Not a friendly smile, a human smile, the kind with teeth. Let's give them a proper Earth welcome.
What do you think Mira does next? Drop your thought in the comments. If you enjoyed this, hit and like, subscribe. Thanks for watching. See you next time.